The prince had 100 noble women to choose from, but he couldn't forget the girl with dirt on her face and firewood on her back, who treated him like an ordinary man. Prince Alexander escaped the palace on horseback, desperate for solitude. The weight of choosing a bride from the kingdom's noble families suffocated him. Every woman presented bad at their eyelashes, recited poetry, and saw only his crown. In the forest clearing, he found her. A young woman bent under the weight of firewood, her face streaked with soot, her dress patched and faded. When his horse startled her, she stumbled, the wood scattering everywhere. "Fool," she snapped, brushing dirt from her hands. "Watch where you're riding. Do you know how long it took to gather that?" Alexander, accustomed to bowing in titles, was stunned into silence. She didn't recognize him in his simple riding clothes. "I apologize. Let me help." "You've done enough damage." But she was already regathering the wood, and Alexander dismounted to assist. Up close, he saw past the dirt, high cheekbones, fierce dark eyes, and a mouth that turned down in concentration. "What's your name?" he asked. "Kira, and you're trespassing. This is village land." She hoisted the wood onto her back with practiced ease. "Go back to wherever nobles play at horseback riding." "How do you know I'm noble?" She gave him a withering look. "Your horse costs more than my village's yearly income. Your boots are Valerian leather, and you have hands that have never done real work." She turned to leave. "Stay out of the forest. It's dangerous for soft city boys." Alexander watched her disappear through the trees, something igniting in his chest. She looked at him with annoyance, not adoration, spoke to him with honesty, not flattery, and he realized with startling clarity she was the first real person he'd met in years. He would find her again. Alexander returned the next day and the day after, each time dressed as a commoner. He told Kira his name was Alex, that he worked in the city as a clerk. She accepted this with a shrug, neither impressed nor interested. "If you're going to keep appearing, make yourself useful," she said, handing him an axe. "I need firewood." Alexander had never chopped wood in his life. His first attempts were pathetic, and Kira laughed, a bright, genuine sound that made his heart skip. "City boy, you swing like you're afraid of the tree. Here." She stood behind him, her calloused hands over his, guiding the motion. "Feet apart. Use your whole body, not just your arms. There." The axe bit deep and wood split cleanly. Over the following weeks, Alexander learned her world. Kira lived alone, caring for her sick grandmother. Her parents had died in a plague 3 years prior. She sold firewood to survive, worked in noble houses when she could, and dreamed of opening a small shop someday. "What about marriage?" Alexander asked one afternoon as they rested. "No time for fairy tales," Kira said, wiping sweat from her brow. "Men from our village want wives who will bear children and keep silent. I have opinions. That makes me difficult." She glanced at him. "What about you, Alex? Some merchant's daughter waiting?" "My family has expectations," he said carefully. "They want me to marry someone appropriate." "Then marry her," Kira said simply. "Don't waste time with the firewood girl when you have a proper future waiting." But Alexander couldn't stay away. Kira was sharp, funny, unimpressed by things that usually awed people. She treated him like an equal, argued with him about philosophy, and laughed at his terrible jokes. He was falling in love with the woman who didn't know he was a prince, and soon he'd have to tell her. The royal proclamation changed everything. The prince would choose his bride at the grand selection ball, where every eligible woman in the kingdom was invited. Kira received her summons with a bitter laugh. "As if I have clothes or manners for a palace ball," she told Alexander. "Besides, why would I want to parade before a spoiled prince who'll pick the prettiest doll?" Alexander's guilt intensified daily. What if the prince isn't what you think? All royals are the same. They don't see us as real people. Kira's voice held old pain. "My mother once worked in the palace. The prince's father dismissed her when she became pregnant, said she was distracted. She died in poverty because he couldn't be bothered to pay fair wages." Alexander felt sick. "Kira, I need to tell you something." "Ms. Kira," a royal guard appeared through the trees, bowing. "His Highness has been searching for you. The Queen requests your immediate presence at the palace." Kira's face went pale. Her eyes snapped to Alexander. "His Highness?" The guard looked between them, confused. "Prince Alexander, we've been looking everywhere. The selection ball begins in 3 hours." Kira stepped back like she'd been slapped. "Prince Alexander." Not a question, a condemnation. "Kira, please." But she was already running, disappearing into the forest she knew better than anyone. The guard moved to follow, but Alexander stopped him. "Let her go." He'd lost her, before he ever really had her. The grand hall glittered with 300 eligible women in their finest gowns. Princesses from neighboring kingdoms, duchesses, countesses, merchant daughters dripping in jewelry. They all wanted the crown, the power, the prestige of being queen. Alexander sat on his throne, hollow inside. His mother, Queen Eleanor, leaned close. "Any catch your eye?" "No, mother." "Alexander, you must choose someone tonight. The kingdom needs a future queen." He forced himself to consider them. Lady Sophia, beautiful and educated. Duchess Catherine, politically connected. Princess Isabella, who traveled from across the sea. All perfect on paper, all wrong. Then commotion at the entrance. A latecomer, and the crowd parted with whispers. Alexander's breath caught. Kira stood in the doorway in a simple dress. Not silk or satin, but clean, dignified. Her hair was pulled back, revealing the face he'd memorized. She held her head high, despite being the poorest woman in the room. Their eyes met across the hall. Hers held anger and hurt, but also defiance. She'd come. Why? The selection proceeded with traditional formality. Each woman approached the throne, curtsied, offered rehearsed greetings. Alexander responded mechanically, his attention locked on Kira at the back of the room. Finally, her turn came. She approached without the practiced grace of nobility, without pretense. She didn't curtsy properly, didn't smile sweetly. "Your Highness," she said, the title bitter on her tongue. "I came to say what I couldn't in the forest. You lied to me, used me for entertainment. But I've realized something." She stepped closer, her voice dropping. "You're more trapped than I ever was. At least I'm free to be myself." She turned to leave, and Alexander stood abruptly. "Wait!" The hall fell silent. He descended the throne steps, his decision crystallizing. "You're wrong about one thing, Kira. I'm not trapped anymore." "Mother," honored guests, Alexander addressed the room, his voice carrying. "I've made my choice." Queen Eleanor smiled with relief. Wonderful. Which noble lady? Kira, the Firewood girl from Thornwood Village. Gasps echoed through the hall. Alexander kept his eyes on Kira's shocked face. She's the woman I choose as my bride. Chaos erupted. Nobles protested. Princesses wept dramatically. The queen stood rigid with fury. Alexander, this is madness. She's a peasant. She's more noble than anyone in this room, Alexander said firmly. She works honestly, speaks truthfully, and sees people as humans, not ranks. He turned to Kira. I know I hurt you. I know you have every reason to refuse, but I'm asking, not as a prince commanding, but as Alex, the man who learned to chop wood beside you. Will you give me a chance to prove my love is real? Kira's eyes glistened. You're asking me to give up everything I know, my village, my independence, my life. I'm asking you to build a new life with me, as equals. Alexander extended his hand. No more lies, no more pretending, just us figuring out how to bridge two worlds. The queen moved to intervene, but Kira spoke first. You chopped wood like a fool. Alexander's lips twitched. You laughed at me. You had opinions about grain distribution. You corrected them. You were right. You brought me wildflowers. You said they were weeds. They were beautiful weeds. Kira took his hand. One condition. I'm not becoming some silent ornament. I have thoughts, ideas about how royalty could actually help people. If I do this, I do it my way. Alexander pulled her close, ignoring the scandalized gasps. I wouldn't want you any other way. The room erupted again, but neither of them cared. They had each other, and everything else could be figured out. The palace became a battlefield. Queen Eleanor refused to accept Kira, hosting private meetings with nobles who opposed the match. The royal council demanded Alexander reconsider. Foreign dignitaries withdrew diplomatic offers, insulted by the peasant bride. She doesn't know which fork to use, one advisor complained. She speaks to dukes like they're villagers. She's wearing this same dress to every function. Because it's her only good dress, Alexander snapped, which tells you more about her character than a closet full of gowns. But the pressure wore on Kira. She tried learning etiquette, but the rules seemed designed to make her feel inadequate. Ladies in waiting whispered behind her back. Nobles accidentally bumped her at dinners, testing if she'd react with common anger. I don't belong here, Kira told Alexander one night, tears in her eyes. Your mother looks at me like I'm dirt. The court treats me like entertainment. Maybe everyone's right. They are wrong, Alexander said fiercely. You're exactly what this kingdom needs. Someone who remembers what real life is like for most people. But I'm losing myself trying to become what they want. Kira's voice broke. I can't be both, the girl who carried firewood or the future queen. Alexander made a decision. Then don't be either. Be something new. A queen who knows hardship, who speaks truth to power, who'll change this kingdom because she remembers what it's like to struggle. He called a council meeting the next day. Kira will be queen. If anyone cannot accept that, you're welcome to resign. But understand this. She knows things none of us do. She's lived what our people live. She's not a weakness. She's our greatest strength. The room remained divided, but in the back, an elderly duke stood. The prince is right. Perhaps it's time royalty remembered what they're supposed to serve. One by one, others stood. Not all, but enough. Kara stopped trying to hide her origins. Instead, she used them. When nobles complained about taxation, she showed them the actual cost of bread. When they dismissed the poor as lazy, she invited them to spend a day doing manual labor. Most declined. A few accepted and were humbled. She created programs, work initiatives, fair wages for palace servants, education opportunities for common children. The nobility grumbled, but the people loved her. Songs appeared about the Firewood queen. Alexander watched her bloom, not into a delicate flower, but into a force of nature. She argued with his council, won some debates, lost others, but always with logic and passion. She learned politics not through etiquette books, but through understanding people. The relationship deepened too. Late nights discussing policy turned into stolen kisses in the library. Formal dinners became excuses to touch hands beneath the table. The chemistry they'd had in the forest intensified, complicated now by crowns and consequences. "I'm still angry you lied," Kara told him one evening on the palace balcony, the city glittering below. "I know," Alexander said. "But I understand why you did." She turned to him. "You want someone to see you, not your title. I get that now. The crown isn't freedom. It's a cage made of gold." "You make it bearable," Alexander said softly. "You remind me why it matters." Kira kissed him then, and the kiss held months of tension, arguments, growth. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, she whispered, "I'm ready." "Ready? To be your wife, your partner, your equal." She smiled, "And to absolutely terrify your mother for the rest of her life." Alexander laughed, pulling her close. "That last part might be my favorite." The wedding was scheduled for the spring, but first, they had to survive winter and the queen's final scheme. Kara stopped trying to hide her origins. Instead, she used them. When nobles complained about taxation, she showed them the actual cost of bread. When they dismissed the poor as lazy, she invited them to spend a day doing manual labor. Most declined. A few accepted and were humbled. She created programs, work initiatives, fair wages for palace servants, education opportunities for common children. The nobility grumbled, but the people loved her. Songs appeared about the Firewood queen. Alexander watched her bloom, not into a delicate flower, but into a force of nature. She argued with his council, won some debates, lost others, but always with logic and passion. She learned politics not through etiquette books, but through understanding people. The relationship deepened too. Late nights discussing policy turned into stolen kisses in the library. Formal dinners became excuses to touch hands beneath the table. The chemistry they'd had in the forest intensified, complicated now by crowns and consequences. "I'm still angry you lied," Kara told him one evening on the palace balcony, the city glittering below. "I know," Alexander said. "But I understand why you did." She turned to him. "You want someone to see you, not your title. I get that now. The crown isn't freedom. It's a cage made of gold." "You make it bearable," Alexander said softly. "You remind me why it matters." Kira kissed him then, and the kiss held months of tension, arguments, growth. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, she whispered, "I'm ready." "Ready? To be your wife, your partner, your equal." She smiled, "And to absolutely terrify your mother for the rest of her life." Alexander laughed, pulling her close. "That last part might be my favorite." The wedding was scheduled for the spring, but first, they had to survive winter and the queen's final scheme. Their wedding night arrived after a ceremony that merged royal tradition with village simplicity. Kira wore a gown embroidered with firewood and wildflowers, a deliberate statement. Alexander wore his father's crown, but Kira's blessing. In their chambers, finally alone, the weight of months fell away. "We survived," Kira breathed. "We did more than survive." Alexander slowly unpinned her hair, watching it cascade down. "We changed everything." "Scared?" she asked as his hands found the laces of her gown. "Terrified," he admitted, "of failing you, of this kingdom, of not being enough." Kira pulled him close. "Then be terrified together with me." They made love as equals, prince and firewood girl meeting in the middle. There was tenderness and hunger, laughter when they fumbled, tears when emotion overwhelmed them. It wasn't perfect or poetic. It was real, messy, and honest, and theirs. Afterward, tangled in silk sheets, Kira traced patterns on his chest. "Tell me we'll make it." "We'll make it," Alexander promised. "Not because it'll be easy, because we'll fight for it every day." Together, always together. Morning brought new challenges. A delegation of neighboring kingdoms demanded audience, unhappy with the common queen. Nobles requested meetings to discuss concerns. The treasury warned of budget issues with Kira's programs. But when they walked into the throne room hand in hand, Alexander in his crown and Kira in her simple circlet, something had shifted. They weren't just king and queen. They were partners who'd faced down tradition, family, and politics. "Let them come," Kira murmured. "We'll face them like we face everything." "How's that?" She smiled, fierce and beautiful, honestly, without apology, and ready to change the world. Alexander kissed her temple. "That's my queen." 5 years later, the kingdom of Valoria looked different. Kira's reforms had taken root. Schools in every village, fair wages for laborers, councils where common people could voice concerns to nobility. The changes came slowly, with resistance, but they came. Alexander and Kira stood in the palace gardens, watching their 3-year-old daughter chase butterflies. Princess Anna, named for Kira's mother, had her father's diplomatic grace and her mother's fearless spirit. "She tried to give her breakfast to a servant child yesterday," Kira said, laughing. "Said the girl looked hungry." "Wonder where she learned that," Alexander teased, wrapping an arm around his wife's waist. "From her father," Kira countered, "who learned it from a firewood girl." They'd found balance. Kira never lost her directness or her connection to village life. She visited Thornwood monthly, helping in ways that mattered. Resources, not charity. Alexander had become a king who listened before deciding, who remembered that every policy affected real people with real lives. Queen Eleanor had softened eventually, especially after Anna was born. "She has your mother's eyes," she'd told Kira one afternoon, something like apology in her voice. "I was wrong about you. You're exactly what Alexander needed, what we all needed." Now watching Anna play, Kira leaned into Alexander. "Do you ever regret it, choosing the difficult path?" "Never," Alexander said without hesitation. "You taught me that the difficult path is usually the right one." "And you taught me that princes can learn to chop wood," Kira said, grinning. "Badly." "Very badly," she agreed, kissing him. "But you tried. That's what matters." Anna ran to them, demanding to be lifted. Alexander swept her up. this child of two worlds who would grow up knowing both palace and village, crown and firewood. Tell me the story, Anna demanded. How Papa met Mama. Alexander and Kira exchanged glances, smiling at the memory that started everything. Once upon a time, Alexander began, a foolish prince was riding through the forest, and a clever girl was carrying firewood. And they both found exactly what they didn't know they were looking for. Anna giggled. Each other. Each other, they agreed. And in that moment, surrounded by gardens that grew from determination and love, they knew they'd created something more valuable than any crown. A kingdom where a girl carrying firewood could become queen, where a prince could learn humility, and where their daughter would grow up believing that love, real, honest, hard-fought love, could change the world. Because it already had. And that's how a prince learned that the most valuable things in life can't be found in palaces or crowns. They're found in honest people with dirty hands and pure hearts. Kira and Alexander proved that love doesn't conquer all, but partnership, respect, and shared values can change the world. If this story touched your heart, smash that like button and subscribe for more emotional romance stories. Drop a crown in the comments if you're Team Alexander, or a wood if you're Team Kira. Would you accept a proposal from someone who lied about their identity? Let me know below. See you in the next story.